Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I am your host, D Palm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. Follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. And follow the entire MTR network at the MTR network. Pretty easy, right? You found us. Don't lose to subscribe in the iTunes store. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts for absolutely free. And once you're there, make sure you leave that 5-star review. It's a great way to show a little feedback. And anything you write with a 5-star review will be read on the air. It's a policy that goes across the entire MTR network. Had a couple 4 stars on another show. Won't be mentioning them. Didn't read them because they were 4 stars. So leave that 5 stars. Have your voice be heard. The email address for the show, and this is going to become important later. The email address is udpodcast@gmail.com. udpodcast@gmail.com. And I want to be honest with you guys, I said I would record the show on Sunday. I said it would be out Monday morning, celebrating 100. Can't believe we made it, yada, yada, yada. But I spent this past weekend at a friend's bachelor party. And spoilers, I'm old. And and it's one of those things where intellectually, you know, hey, you've gotten older. You can't do what you used to do the way you used to do it and bounce back in the same kind of time frame. But I was ambitious. I felt good about myself. I hit the road from Charleston at 8 in the morning on Sunday. I was on the road. I was dedicated. I hit the house at about 12:30, and it was sheets for your boy. It was not a situation where the product I could give would be commiserate with what I think is a milestone of the 100th episode. I actually sat down and recorded like 20 minutes of this last night. The computer gave up because the computer was like, hey, man, you just don't have it. You don't have the fastball. Just come back tomorrow, ice the arm. But the arm is iced. I'm feeling good. And before I get into anything else, I do want to say shout out to all my friends who are on the bachelor party with me. It is a very lucky thing to have friends that I don't see these. Like, these are all my New York friends, the Columbia friends. I don't see them very often. And it's a real cool space to be in life where you can catch up with those cats and it feels like nothing. You didn't miss a beat. It's like you saw each other the day before. And it's also cool because you get to watch your friends kind of grow because we were all very dumb college athletes. We were just all a bunch of athletes. We're a bunch of dumb college kids together. And now, like, even like when we joke, I was telling a story about something. I was like, and then, you know, you shove that away like an ulcer. Like, you shove that away because it's emotion. We'll deal with that ulcer when we're 60. And we all laughed, like, because the machismo and the bullshit from being a child, from being like like I said, the most undependable demographic in the world is the teenage male or young 20-year-old male. And we all grew past that. We all survived. We all made it. We're all here. It's a cool situation. So talking about growth, episode 100. We're finally here. If you look at iTunes, it's like 115 and 117. Ignore iTunes. This is the 100th numbered episode of UD Pod. And we're going to do all like the reminiscing type bullshit at the end. But I just want to say thank you to anyone who's ever let me be part of their day, part of your commute, part of your suffering at work, part of your whatever. Hey, thank you for letting my voice and the voices on our network be a part of your day. It means a lot to us. It is something you don't have to do, something you can ignore, but not just the listens, but the interaction with all the fans and with all the people who listen. It's been so rewarding of the last 100 episodes. And it's dope because this is the third show I've taken you 100 episodes. And most podcasts don't make it past 10 or 15 because this stuff's hard, man. You got to make a commitment. You got to, like, I'm staring at 3 different screens right now because one's got my rundown on it. One has all my articles, and I'm talking into my computer to record. And we do it because we love it. And we do it because it's rewarding for us, and we have so much fun doing it. And another way I wanted to say thank you to everyone who listens to this is I wanted to announce on this 100th episode that we will be running back the UD Pod Pick'em Contest. That's right. Every week, you have a slate of NFL games to pick against the spread. You pick them in the group, you see your results. I did this whole thing last year so I get a little audience interaction, maybe a little back and forth talk, and I won. I wasn't supposed to win. Like, I had a plan to give out some MTR type gifts. Oh, hold on, I guess the putting themselves over bell will have to ring one time on the 100th episode. But yeah, I won. I wasn't supposed to win. I did win. I gifted myself an MTR shirt, and I gave myself a solo podcast. It's very nice. But no, there'll be prizes. We'll be announcing them. Make sure you email udpodcast@gmail.com and put in the title Pick'em Contest. And that way I'll have you enter it out. Make sure you get all the information for the logins. We're also doing something else this year because I'm not sure you guys can beat me at Pick'em. I've just had these doubts in my mind. So what I'm going to do is we're going to try something this year. We're going to try to do a UD Pod Fantasy Football League. What I need to happen is, if you are interested in the next 6 days, before I record on Sunday, so I've got a show recording on Sunday. Pull up the calendar here. If it wants to work for me, it looks like it doesn't. But this coming Sunday, whatever Sunday that is, whatever day, I think it's the 5th, August 5th. If you email me before noon Eastern, August 5th, with the subject line fantasy, just let me know you're interested. I'll get all the information from there. Let me know you're involved so I can get a head count, so I can figure out if we even have enough to do this kind of league. We'll discuss all the, how do you say, gambling particulars at the appropriate time. But right now I'm just trying to gauge some interest. I don't play anything for free, so if we do fantasy, I'm going to have you crack open the wallets. It won't be too much. It won't be prohibitive, but I do want to be invested, because when I win, I want to make sure I can not just tout pride. I can tout y'all's money over you too. And that's it. Those are 2 big announcements. Again, thank you to anyone who's ever taken the time to listen to me on this show, on Super Tuesday, on Character Corner, on Dude You Podcast, on any of the shows I guest on any of our premium shows. That means a lot to me. It means a lot to the network. And yeah, let's get into it. So heading into this solo show, I did this thing on Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, again, dpalm66. I'm very consistent in that way. But I did a thing where one of those like Instagram stories, and a lot of people ask questions for episode 100. And so I've got those in front of me now. We're going to open the mailbag. We'll call this the mailbag from now on. And whenever I do a solo show, I can plan in advance. I'll announce it on Instagram, and I'll announce I'm taking questions. We'll use the question sticker to get those in. They'll be anonymous if I answer them on Instagram. And if you want to be anonymous, I'll keep it anonymous here too. Not a big deal. So the first question I got, and I got it twice. When will President Palmer, that's my father for the uninitiated, and your wife, that is Susan, who make another guest appearance on the pod? Funny question, rude question. I don't like it when the guests overshadow me. It is a thing that Susan's been on twice at this point, and both times I haven't appreciated the reaction. No, and there's not much I can do. Like she's my wife, and I love her, but it's supposed to be my show, so that's internal strife. I'll have her on in the fall. We'll figure out a way to get her back on. My dad always has a standing invitation. I don't care who's on the guest list. If my dad says, hey, let me come on the podcast, he knows I'm a phone call away, and I'll drop anyone to have him on. But I do usually have him on over Labor Day weekend, so that's my goal, is to try to have him on again this Labor Day to produce something out for you guys. So those are your answers to those 2 questions. The other 2 on this one were a little rude for my friends who I was just in the party with. Here's one. Why did Mark Richt's dumbass recruit Cam as a tight end? Now, this is a great question, because it is a well-known fact that, yes, indeed, Mark Richt did recruit Cam as a tight end. But the thing about it is, Mark Richt wasn't alone. A lot of teams recruited Cam as a tight end because he had such prodigious offensive talent. They kind of wanted to find ways to give him the ball. But the man was a quarterback. The man always should be a quarterback. The man was resilient and staying a quarterback, even as far as when he went to JUCO and then back to Auburn. Like, he was demanding, I'm going to be a quarterback. And you got to commend a guy like that. Like, I look at the situation in Baltimore right now where they've got Lamar Jackson split out and they're taking reps in different positions. Hey, man, maybe he doesn't start over Flacco week 1. That's fine. No one's expecting that. But you draft a first-round quarterback to be a quarterback. You're devaluing your asset, and you're opening yourself for injury. If you're going to say, hey, we've got a situation where, Lamar Jackson split out. What's to stop someone from going out and taking out your future? Why are you going to mortgage your present, which hasn't looked that good? They gave Joe Flacco all that money because he won a Super Bowl, not because he was a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I don't know if you know the difference. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, yes, Joe Flacco was quote-unquote elite that year, but that was it. He's been less than middle of the road ever since, and that contract has hamstrung the team from building around him. So I think we're at the tail end of the Flacco experiment in Baltimore and the beginnings of Lamar Jackson. So, like Mark Richt's dumbass recruiting Cam as a tight end, they should not be toying with such talent outside from under center. What is a sports moment you would reverse, not counting 28-3? I like that I got listeners who are so invested in my life and things that I love, and that means a lot. That's a lot of engagement. You can't really put a price tag on. That also means you people know how to hurt me in ways that I don't like being hurt. the sports moment I would reverse, not counting 28-3, is probably, just because it's fresh on my mind, the Georgia-Bama finish from this past January. As I mentioned many times in the podcast, your boy was in the building. I took my dad. I was there with some friends who I actually saw this weekend. And it was one of those situations where you watched a room get deflated. Because I don't care what the narrative became about overtime and the backup quarterback. At halftime, the narrative was, this is Sanford on a Saturday, the Georgia Dome or Mercedes-Benz Dome, whatever they call it, now. It was rocking. It felt like Sanford on a Saturday. All they needed was some hedges to be flown in and dropped to keep us off the field, because it just felt like one of those moments where it was hope. And I know some fans of the show are listening and say, oh, I know hope, because their hope has led to things. All my Georgia fans, all my Atlanta area sports fans are wincing. They say, hope. I remember that 60-win Hawks team. I remember 28-3. I remember Georgia beat them down on Alabama for a half. So, yeah, that's got to be it. And thank you very much for mining the well of my pain for your entertainment once more for the show. Next question. Better saga, Sting versus Vader or Ric Flair versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat? And I do appreciate you guys coming in with the wrestling questions, because aside from my numerous appearances over at the PW Torch Livecast and Rich Fans Deep Dive, I am a huge fan, and I've always been a huge fan, and there was a brief sabbatical, but now it's just been, I'm back, and I appreciate it. And from day one, if you ask me, I'm a Sting mark. When I was a kid, the bright colors and the flashy moveset, of course, it captured the imagination. But I like Sting could go. Like, Sting would wrestle for an hour. He went on Broadway with Flair, Cash the Champions, really made him. Vader is, as I mentioned when we covered his passing, was the picture of fear from my youth. The man was wrestling a match in Japan. His eyeball was knocked out of his eye socket. He used his Vader mask to push it back in and finish the match. Sting had to take a couple months off after their first title bout, not because kayfabe, because Vader literally lacerated his kidney during the match. I love their matches. They're physical in a way that you don't see really any time today, partially because it lends to shorter careers, but also because, it was Vader's style. The guy who was a great worker because everything was snug, because most of it was real. And I'm about to peek against him. Look, Ricky Flair and Ricky Steamboat put on some of the best matches in the history of professional wrestling. When Dave Meltzer said that Okada and Omega had surpassed Steamboat Flair, I think it was in early 2017, I think the G1 match, I couldn't believe it. But I go back and I watch, and maybe the recency bias, but yeah, if you've got to put the sagas side by side, give me Flair Steamboat, if only because I know I'm going to watch a match that, no matter when it happens, it translates to today, and no one was harmed in the filming of that match. It's also a huge help, in my opinion. Let's see, any more questions we had here? I already got those couple in the way. Let's take a look at. I had another battle of questions go up, and let's see here. Is Julio going to go over 1,500 yards this year? And we're going to be covering Julio later on in the show, but I think it's a really interesting question because I think he kind of has to. Look, there's a lot of talent on the Falcons offense, but if Julio's not an early focal point, the question is going to be how far can it really go? And because what they're going to do is they're going to run a set up Julio, or they may throw the set up to run, but Julio's going to be the crux at which this football team rotates. And I'm glad he's in camp. I'm glad he made it on time. I'm glad he's getting his money. But I am a little nervous to see how it all plays out because they need him in a way that I don't think they realize because he's been so indispensable. And there have been injuries, of course, and they found workarounds that were always temporary, but the win percentage with Julio and without Julio speaks for itself. It is a world difference because Julio Jones requires a cover, a corner, and over-the-top help at all times. Otherwise, you're going to end up like that poor boy from Carolina who got fired after giving up all those yards last year. Okay, so that's the mailbag for this week. Thanks for everyone who took the time to send the message. Again, Instagram, at dpalm66. Anytime I'm doing a solo show, I'll put it up on Wednesday or Thursday. A call for questions. Anything in the news, I'll cover it. We'll knock at the mailbag at the top of the show. That way we can get to the meat of the thing. And this week, the meat of the thing starts with baseball. I'm as shocked as you are. But once again, the way baseball makes this show, not by on-field product. No. That would make too much sense for the only season in season to give us something to talk about on the field. No. What I've got to talk about now is Sean Newcomb. And you may not know who that is, and that's okay, because Sean Newcomb is a Braves starting pitcher. I know. I'm talking about the Cobb County Braves. I'll stop the world. Who went almost to a no-hitter this week. Golf clap for that. But in doing so, he had some old racist tweets dug up and brought to the light. And it's interesting because we covered kind of this phenomenon on this past week's mailbag on the Super Tuesday podcast regarding the James Gunn situation. This is different, of course, because you got the old fallbacks of I was a teenager. We'll deal with that in a second. But the bad faith argument of, this is only looked up because a Washington Nationals fan went to his and searched words. And it's getting to the point now where you know exactly what the team's going to say. You know what the team's going to say. You know what the player's going to say. You know what the league's going to say. You know what the one black teammate's going to be forced to say in front of the cameras. And you know what the one Latino teammate's going to be forced to say in front of the cameras regarding the white player's character and not the man I know and blah, blah, blah. They're never smiling when they say it, by the way. They're always very tight-lipped. And it's almost like that you can feel the pressure around them. This is a sport where a couple of years ago, they asked a prominent starting pitcher if he'd be willing to take a knee. He said, I'd love to, but it wouldn't fly in this sport. It wouldn't fly in my clubhouse. It's an interesting conundrum because people say, oh, don't be so hard. There were tweets when they were kids. Hey, man, these are deplorable positions of any age. I asked last week, when is white people just going through racist and homophobic phases? Is that like learning to drive? I don't think so. And particularly this one, 18. Hey, 18's voting age. 18's dying for your country age. Don't call him a kid. Ryan Lochte's not a kid. This guy's not a kid either. He wasn't a kid when he said it. And yeah, do we say stupid and reckless things as teenagers? Of course we do. And last week I kind of jokingly said, spend the $8. $8 will clear your Twitter account. Spend the $8. But it's so funny because even saying spend the $8, it never deals with the root of the problem. And that's one thing I think that we as a society are actively avoiding. Even people who like me who are saying, we can't sweep this under the rug, we have to deal with what they said. There's really no way to deal with it because no one wants to deal with the attitudes that caused it. Even the player says, oh, this isn't who I am, people know who I am. Well, why don't you come forward and explain to us how you changed? Explain to us the journey you took from the tweets that we saw to the man you say you are now. Or do we applaud you your next time out to say, there but for the grace of God go I, or thank goodness they don't search my Twitter account. I don't know. And people now are the counter backlash to, these are tweets from years ago and we're just manufacturing outrage, and what is the purpose of this public shame? And part of me agrees. I'm gonna be honest. Part of me says, why are these bad faith actors going and hunting for these things? We wouldn't know. We didn't know then because he didn't matter then. Now that he has the platform, should he pay the $8? Yes. But more importantly, he should be doing things and living in a way that we don't question. The public shaming is not for the player. Everyone says, what about these poor guys? Hey, what poor guys? Hader didn't lose a check. This cat whose name I've already forgotten, it's Sean Nick. I was going to play, I forgot. I remembered it. He's not going to miss a meal. He's going to be given diversity training, which, by the way, the framing of diversity training as a punishment is literally like all you need to know about racial relations in America. But he'll give some speeches, he'll do a little outreach, and then we'll never talk about it again. But maybe, just maybe, a kid who's watching it watches him get raked over the coals. And maybe, just maybe, that kid says, well, ask the question that the reporters don't ask, why is it wrong and how have you changed? Maybe that makes that kid second guess it. Maybe they should be giving speeches to kids, not about the dangers of social media, but the dangers of these ideologies that are easier to spread than ever. It used to be to get like the crazy right-wing, like psychotic gun nut stuff. You had to go to gun shows and like actively seek out people handing out pamphlets. Now they're talking about ethics in game journalism. Now they're fighting against diversity in comics. They find different ways to pick and prod at these kids. and different ways to manipulate them and mobilize them from a certain aspect, and then they just carry it on. So my question for Hader, my question for Newcomb, show me who you are now. Don't tell me. Don't try your teammates to take this hit for you. Show me who you are now. Educate me. Make me know who Sean Newcomb is now. Make that. If my name was dragged like this, you better believe I would do everything I could. People might call it phony and they call it forced. So what? I'm gonna do the work. I can't show you my motivation. I can show you my work. And no one who's been told that, their careers have been derailed because of about, no one's shown the work. Not a one. You know how I know they haven't shown the work? Because we have an example of someone who did. Does anyone remember Tim Hardaway, Run TMC, Miami Heat point guard? His kid was a Hawk, which makes us all feel old. He said some horribly homophobic slurs to the Miami paper of record. I think it was mid-2000s. Since then, Tim Hardaway's been an ambassador for the NBA to the gay and lesbian community. He's done countless hours of work, and he does it largely untouted because we don't cheer on positive stories. I can say confidently that the work I've seen Tim Hardaway do, he's a changed man. And maybe behind closed doors he's not. And maybe in his heart of hearts he's not. But the work he's done, it's hard to believe. And even if that's in the back of his mind, his work is unassailable. That's what I want to see your haters and Newcombs do. Do the work. There's room in this world, this glorious world of ours, for forgiveness of all kinds. We see it every day. If you put in the work and not just assume, hey, whoa, you don't know my heart. Well, then show me your heart. Because all we've seen is trash. All right. So here at UniPod, we sometimes take unpopular opinions on well-trod situations. And one of the most unpopular opinions that I will always hold on to here is that Dwight Howard is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Argue with yourself, don't at me. But I will admit, Dwight has proven to be completely fucking hateable at every turn. And I'll defend the Lakers stuff because Kobe's an asshole and I can point to things there. But you watch the Stan Van interview in Orlando, which was the first domino to fall. He was always kind of corny and loud and annoying. But Orlando, the Stan Van interview, when the reporters are asking about him trying to get his coach fired, to the debacle that was LA, to Houston, where he and James Harden couldn't get along, to Atlanta, where they got rid of him as soon as possible, and this was his big homecoming, to Charlotte, who cut him, I think. It doesn't matter. He's a no also ran to now he's joining the Wizards and claiming today that the Warriors wanted to sign him, but John Wall's pitch was better. What better pitch is there than them dropping 3 rings on your desk? That's a weird lie, Dwight. But even weirder is the fact that Dwight Howard is determined to make me have to fight about him being a first ballot Hall of Famer with sound bites like these. When introduced as the newest member of the Wizards, he said, "I learned magic for 8 years. I traveled to La La Land. I learned how to work with rockets. Then I went and learned to fly with some hawks. Got stung by the hornets. Haha, that was a joke. But through all that, it's taught me how to be a wizard." If I created that little, speech, monologue, horse shit as a child and took it to my teacher, I'd have been sent back to redo it. I'm embarrassed. You put me in a place, Dwight, I need... Dwight, you're a first ballot Hall of Famer. The numbers don't lie. But you put me in a situation where it's hard to ignore the fact that your unlikability and overall corniness may not be the most conducive ways to other people agreeing with me. Will you be a first ballot? Of course you will. Will you be a Hall of Famer? Sure. You drag Hito Turkoglu and Jameer Nelson in NBA Finals over LeBron James in the Eastern Conference. It's amazing. Rashard Lewis was an important cog on that team. My God. But man, just shut up and play basketball. Because we've seen flashes. He had a 20-rebound game last year. They're still there. He's still a freak of nature. And the weirdest thing about Dwight is that people hate him because he never lived to other people's expectations, which is true and I guess kind of fair as a public figure. But like Dwight's not even what we think of Dwight is. Quick, how tall is Dwight Howard? Nope, he's not 7 feet tall. He's not 6'11". He's about 6'9" or 6'10". He's about LeBron James's height. Like, that's what people need to understand, that what he does is so unique and his skill set is so particular that I can't even argue against the Corgans. I don't know what to do anymore, Dwight. You put me in a weird position. Someone else who's putting us all in weird positions is Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, who has been aired out recently, having discussions with people on Instagram and on Twitter in their DMs, although to his credit, under his own name, with a blue check and an avatar and everything. He went on CJ McCollum's podcast, and he kind of roasted the old dude. And CJ McCollum said, some things like, it just hurt. It made me mad to see you join the Warriors. And KD decided to dunk on his own show by saying things like, just keep playing, man. Don't worry about what goes on the top of things. And get out your feelings, yo. Aside from the fact that a man with multiple burner accounts will never, ever, ever tell me to get out of my feelings. It was just kind of a bad look. It wasn't a bad look for CJ. It was a weird look. It was a weird podcast appearance. I listened to it cover to cover. Give it a shot. It'll be strange to you too. And then someone asked, okay, so after the podcast, are we calling Kevin Durant a B word? And CJ McCollum wrote back on Twitter, I still think the B word is harsh and shouldn't be used. He knows that decision was soft, but I respect it. It's like getting jumped with your brothers by a gang you should have helped beat, then joining the gang that jumped you and your brothers 2 months later and forgetting about your bros. Kevin Durant, not one to take such slights laying down, responded, so I would get into a gang fight, lose, plot on my brother for 2 months in our home, and then go get the gang we lost to and beat him up? You think that low of me, CJ? I just did your fucking podcast. Snakes in the grass, boy, I tell you. Now, this is complicated on multiple levels. Number one, that is the belief of many people, Kevin, that you're kind of a snake. That you get called almost a snake, like, this is what the people think you did. The other complication for me is that CJ says the decision was soft, but I respect it. Yo, you respect the thing you brought out next? That's weird. But no, Kevin's right. Like, hey, man, maybe this is kind of how people see it. Like, if Kevin Durant's just now realizing that, like, I don't know, man. It's so weird. Because then it becomes people asking Kevin Durant about it and saying, yo, he sounds upset. Why is it upset? Kevin or CJ's the one who sounds upset. Kevin, when one person in the argument has a history of multiple burner accounts, you're the upset one. That's how this works. I don't make the rules. I just live by it. I just live in this world, Kevin. And yeah, it's a bad look for everyone all around. The best look I've seen in sports all year, maybe my lifetime. Is what what LeBron James did today in Akron, Ohio. Today we saw the opening of his I Promise School. It is a school directed at underprivileged youth and people who just haven't had the opportunities that they should be afforded. He is going to be opening the school. It's not like a charter school, like Dion with the charter school that he tried in Dallas that didn't work out, and the less said the better. No, LeBron James opened an actual public school, and it's insane. It's crazy to me. He figured out a way to do this. He said that when he was a kid, one of his most freeing activities was riding his bike. So every child that enrolls gets a bike. They have special after-school activities so kids are not tempted to have idle time to get into trouble. They're going to be helping with job placement for parents. For people who have food scarcity, they're going to be offering meals. This isn't just a school. He's trying to transform Akron. He's trying to save his city. I don't care where you stand on LeBron GOAT debate. I can make the numbers argument. They kind of speak for themselves, but truth be told. The realest argument right now is I don't know if there's a better person in sports. And I think that's one of the really interesting things that we've seen kind of in the last 20 years. When we talk about transformative athletes, we don't just speak about their on-the-court escapades. Serena's on the court work is amazing. But she also changed the paradigm for women tennis. She made more money for everyone. She got maternity leave factored in the rankings. And so it was recent. Tiger Woods. Say what you will about Tiger Woods. No one cares more. No more people care about golf than on a Sunday when Tiger's in contention. He changed the sport. LeBron James, in the era of player movement, he said, nah, man, they have us on paper. We've got us. That's how, honestly, how Kevin Durant ends up in the Warriors, because that deal was done before Warriors Thunder, in my opinion. It's been reported Draymond had been talking to Kevin all year, texting after games, which isn't tampering somehow. And I think that we'd all look back at the Kevin Durant joining the Warriors thing if the Thunder hadn't gone 7. We'd look at it differently. But they did go 7. That wasn't part of the plan. But Draymond taking less money so they could fit in Kevin Durant, that was part of the plan. And the plan paid off. And that's the era that LeBron James shepherded. That's what LeBron James brought to the league. And now what he's doing is he's bringing that same kind of transformative energy to a city that needs it. To Akron, Ohio. Often forgotten. And so I was on the I Promise website and I looked at the information. How does the I Promise school differ from any other school? The school will operate with a longer than normal school year with a focus on accelerated learning to bring kids up to speed who otherwise might be lagging. In addition, there's a focus on combating factors outside the classroom that could cause the children to struggle. Services are available to help students deal with from stress related to parents who are struggling to make ends meet. In addition, there are activities to prevent kids from having too much idle time and potentially getting in trouble. The school also provides services to families, like I spoke earlier about job placement, assistance for parents, and an on-site food bank. Like, this isn't a vanity project. This isn't a way to launder money. This is LeBron James saying, I have the capacity to give back. So I'm going to give back. Now we can have a larger discussion on whether we should be dependent on dedicated self-made millionaires to subsidize public education. But that's not the discussion we're having today. Today's discussion is about a fourth grader who had no steady home for years, who lived on welfare, who slept on his friends' couches. He had no right to school, missed over 100 days of class, and he never, ever, at that point in his life, played under organized sports. That was LeBron James in fourth grade. And in his remarks today, he recognized that not every kid here will be a LeBron James on basketball court, but he wants to give them the tools to be the LeBron James of whatever they're passionate about. If the I Promise School generates people of the character and dedication and gratitude of LeBron James, a fraction of that, it gives me more hope than watching the news. That shit is depressing. Let's talk about college football. College football is rolling back, and I once again entered my annual, I love it because I play it and because I love football, but also, oh my God, these players are playing for free. They're enduring horrible physical and emotional trauma at the expense of their future for the profit of people who don't give a damn about them. But media day, media day. So media days happen. I don't cover media days because largely it's just media days. But Mac had a very special press conference during their media day where Commissioner John Steinbrecher, doesn't matter. He announced that the Mac pirate flag will be officially adopted by all teams in the league. That means if you beat a team from a Power 5 conference or another big non-conference win, that pirate flag flies at your stadium for 1 week. I love it. I love it. And I don't just love it because it proves me righter than right that the BCS was more fair. In a piece that's linked in our show notes that I wrote for Did You Crazy a couple of years ago. It opened the door to more teams. It was more equitable than any playoff you'll ever imagine. But now we've gone full pirate. Like, Maction's been a thing for years now. And the fact that the Mac is embracing it makes it more interesting. You gotta think this is not just, it's not just a pirate flag. It's literally a Mac Jolly Roger. It's amazing. You gotta remember that football last year, the MAC had 5 programs receive a bowl bid, and won Power 5 games over Nebraska, Rutgers, Kansas again. And in basketball, Buffalo blew out Arizona in the NCAA tournament. I love that there's a team leaning into this. I love there's a conference leaning into this. They're the outsiders. They know it. They may not get the big crown, but it's a good reminder that not everything, particularly in college athletics, is about solely the championship. There's only one champion. And if you tell me that every other team's season was a failure, can't buy it. Other teams might have different goals, might have different aspirations, but it's exciting that the MAC is embracing this in the way they always should. Now, I referenced myself earlier because I wrote this piece in 2014, and it spoke to kind of what was going to happen with the playoff. And I'm not going to toot my own horn too much, but I'm going to quote myself here. Look, I get that people think this new playoff system will cure all ails, but the fact that college football isn't college basketball is a good thing to me. The bigger the playoff gets, the more it dilutes the importance of the regular season, introduces more randomness as opposed to recognizing greatness. Don't believe me? Check out college basketball ratings during regular season versus March Madness. Hell, how many college basketball games have you watched in the regular season not involving a team you cheer for? Meanwhile, in college football, the Mac's got fucking pirate flags. That wasn't then. I added that. Teams included but not limited to Ball State, Kent State, Northern Illinois, and Western Michigan are must-see TV for college football heads. And that's a good thing. The playoff will move bar conversations from who deserved to be in the title game under the BCS, a specious debate, to who deserved to be in the playoff. And we'll be back here in 2 or 4 or however long until the playoff expands, doing it all over again, especially since playoff participants will be decided by a committee and not computers. Go check the acts of some of those committee members. Not pretty. Look, I'm not saying that we have a time machine or the BCS was the only thing they ever did. College football was a great sport back when the writers voted and it was AP national check. It was still a great sport. But this focus on proving that you've got the best team for what? To who? Look, man, these kids are what matters, and everyone seems to be forgetting that. You know how I know they forgot that? Because an idiot got to speak at CFB Media Day. And I'm not talking about a player. There is a writer for Yahoo Sports, CBS Sports, Dennis Dodd. He wrote this past week, and I'm going to quote him here. Try to envision Tim Tebow in his heyday skipping SEC Media Days because of, well, school. Right or wrong, that wouldn't have happened. The need to better himself at the conference in the school would have outstripped another summer school lecture. If you're wincing as you hear it thinking I misread it, you're not alone. He's speaking about Bryce Love, the best player in the Big 12 headed in the season, was not at media this year because he wants to graduate in December and needs to take his courses in summer school. Were the idea of the student athlete actually important? This guy would be raked over the coals. He wouldn't have a job right now. But I bet you didn't hear about the story yet. Because the idea of student athlete is a lie. Good on Bryce Love for skipping media days. Largely a empty and craven bid for headlines. They want their clicks. We get them their clicks. But I tell you what, man. This is a kid who looked out for himself. And the Dennis Dodds of the world, don't get that kid matters to. More than your precious conference or your fucking deadline. Well, I'm talking about the good side of student athletes. The student athlete who decided to be a student, who prioritized that in the moment of personal glory. Look, man, Jameis Winston's got to figure it out. This is getting fucking ridiculous. So Jameis Winston, as we covered before, is now headed to the 3-game suspension, negotiated so he doesn't fight it. And he came out and said something just this past week. He said the day the suspension came down, apparently his son was born. And he said that holding his son and knowing that he'd teach his son to be a man in this world, to be a great man in this world, it made him want to grow up. This isn't stealing crab legs. This is a history and a pattern of unwanted sexual advances towards women at the very least. No one wants to seem to deal with that. And what the Glazers and Tampa Bay have to decide is knowing what we know about Jameis Winston, does that make it okay for me to be the quarterback of your football team? From an on-the-field standpoint, he has not lived up to some of the expectations I know that people in Tampa Bay had coming from FSU. From a PR standpoint, how many more hits do you want to take for this kid? I don't know. Because I know that there's something, a concept I heard this week, athletic privilege. I hadn't really thought about it before, but it's real. Because Jameis Winston, the plumber, be in jail. Everybody, Jameis Winston, the third stringer, would be cut. Because there's a perceived value in a specific sport, he gets a longer leash. And not everyone understands that. No one's decrying that as a lie or some sort of misconstruing of the facts. It's the way the world works. But the question is, when does athletic privilege when it tramples on other people, what recourse do we have? And that's when the eyes turn to ownership and management. You say, look, is this guy's perceived value on the field of play more important than a large portion of the fan base you just told doesn't matter? And people say, oh, women don't want football. Hey, man, women know football. Women know football because they thought they had to keep up with us without realizing that most of us don't know shit about football. Tip of the cap to the departing Darrelle Revis. Like LeBron James, he ushered in, or kind of was a member of the era of player autonomy, player individuality, the decision to go where you want to go, to live the life you want to live. Darrelle Revis continued to bet on himself and continued to win. And the saddest part about it is, if I tell you to think of one Darrelle Revis play, all you're going to think about is Moss smoking him and him coming up with that hamstring. And that's okay. Because he was so good, otherwise they never really threw to him. They avoided him openly on the field. No one wanted a piece of Revis Island. And don't let people at the end lie to you and tell you, he was overrated, he stole a bunch of money. No. He got the money he deserved because he worked for it. He got the money he deserved because he earned it. And he earned it by being one of the best corners you'll ever see. 2018, holdouts. It's gotten interesting. Le'Veon Bell's not in camp. Aaron Donald, I don't know what the hell they're doing over there. Y'all need to pay him. Y'all pay everybody else on that team. Pay that man. He's terrifying. As I mentioned earlier, answering questions, Julio Jones restructured his deal. I call it a restructure. It was really barely a shuffle. They converted some of his bonus from next year and the salary this year, giving him $3 million more, making his pay still criminally undersized, but he feels good enough to come to camp. And there are people saying, "Oh, this is horrible precedent for the game. This is not the Falcons' way. The Falcons' way has to be like this whole defense of the shield thing. I don't get it. Where did this come from? Where y'all learn that at? That's not how I live. The only time I see people go really heavy for ownership or for management is when, one, it's something you can't control or you're not involved in, and two, hey man, just shut up and play. You should be lucky you're playing football. What's to you at your job? Don't demand better pay. Don't ask for a raise. Be happy you got a job. You be insulted as hell, right? People are mad at Earl Thomas right now for holding out in Seattle. He's at the tail end of a 5-year, $40 million deal. Now, you look what Earl Thomas does on Sundays, the physicality with which he does it, and tell me he's worth $8 million. Shit. Pay that man. And it's so funny because his agent tweeted today that only certain people get to be capitalists. And it's funny because these reporters and this press, they're in bed with the owners, man. The owners, they stay. All the rest of us, we change. So what do? They carry that water. They say, hey, look, the selfish, greedy-ass player who wants a little more money on his very limited time left in this field. Meanwhile, the billionaire owner. It makes sense to me. It makes sense. But we're in training camp. Training camp news is all out. Josh Brown taking a leave of absence from the Browns to get his mind right headed into the season. I, for one, commend this. I never mentioned a relapse. Never mentioned something going wrong. He said it's a preventative measure and continuing with his recovery plan. I, for one, commend the Browns for being supportive of Josh Brown. And I know they're supportive of Josh Brown because the last time he played 14 games, he led the league in yards when he's catching balls from, I believe, Case Keenum. So there's a ridiculous amount of talent that allows them to be this patient. But it's also nice to see that in 2018, a player can say, hey, I've got this problem. I've got these needs. I have to adjust what I'm doing to my personal health. And for a team to at least nominally pay the fuck attention. Training camp means media availability, which means Tom Brady got asked about his teammate Julian Edelman's suspension for PED use. And not because he's his teammate, but because he is a disciple of Alex Guerrero, the trainer who Tom Brady has brought in to fight with Bill Belichick. I mean, to influence the team. I mean, to help elongate his career. Apparently, buddy can cure cancer. So we'll talk about that, I guess, another time. But Alex Guerrero was treating and coaching up Julian Edelman. And I know it's not fair to say, hey, this guy worked with him. He got power PEDs. What is he doing? It's not a one-to-one connection. But there's a correlation. And when you're the guy who brought on this trainer, a trainer who, as of this season, has been banned from the sidelines and has been prohibited from treating any other player on Patriots property besides Tom Brady, he's seen his rights get curtailed. It's fair to ask. So a reporter did that. He did his job. He asked. What was Brady's reply? I'm out. Which, first of all, was hilarious to hear. But second, shows a man who just doesn't want to be the story and doesn't realize that, hey, man, this is the story. The NFL's trying to corner the market and having us talk about everything except for football. And sorry, Tom, you're in the except for football pool now, man. We're going to talk about this, especially since Julian Edelman, he's not exactly at camp because he's kind of suspended. All right. So, let's talk about America's team. Let's talk about Jerry Jones. So last week, the NFL and NFLPA said they were open negotiation, have open talk. All policies are going to be frozen for a while so that they can figure out a way to make this amicable with everyone involved. However, Jerry Jones didn't get the memo. During an interview with the Dallas radio station on last Thursday, Stephen Jones, son of Jerry, said he was asked directly if players would be punished for staying in the locker room in the national anthem. Stephen Jones said yes. That's one way to do it right in our mind, and that's to go toes on the line and stand for the anthem. That's not an I or me thing. This is an organization thing. We feel strongly about it, and we don't think it's a controversy. That's just the way we do it. Mr. Jones, do you expect players to follow the team rules and not protest? If they want to be a Dallas Cowboy, yes, I do. It's even the language Stephen Jones chose in that media availability, in that interview. Toe the line. There's only so far you can push a bunch of grown men until they push back. Like maybe there are guys who aren't inclined to kneel on the Cowboys team, which looks to be largely the team that Jerry has built. Guys who are disinclined to protest. But if you get told, I bet you won't, someone might. You know who won't? Dak. So a lot's been made of Dak Prescott as quote-unquote leader guy. He's like quote-unquote leader guy. He's the guy the team's rallied around, clear the team, moving on from Jason Witten and Des Bryant, has decided that he is their bell cow going forward. We're going to be a Dak-centric team with Zeke right with him, who kind of echoed these next sentiments. Dak was asked about the protest, and Dak said, I never protest. I never protest during the anthem. I don't think it's the time or the venue to do so. The game of football has always brought me such peace, and I think it does the same for a lot of people. A lot of people playing the game, a lot of people watching the game, a lot of people who have any impact on the game. So when you bring such controversy to the stadium, to the field, to the game, it takes away. It takes away from that. It takes away from the joy and the love that football brings a lot of people. Now, we've seen some of the players around the league get real mad about that, and I get it. Because to watch a quarterback of color in this league, to say those things, it sends a message that's chilling. Because I don't know where Dak Prescott actually stands. I do know he went out there and carried Jerry Jones' water. I do know Ezekiel Elliott and he towed the line. And you can have your feelings about it if you want. These are guys on rookie contracts in a league where tomorrow, as we already covered, is not promised. In a vacuum, I took the weekend and I've pretty largely divorced the emotion from this because, like, at a certain point, like, what the fuck you want me to do? Like, what do you want me to do? And before we get too far into this Dak speaks for the team and Dak's a leader of men type thing, I want to remind everyone who is not an SEC football fan. Dak Prescott went on spring break with his teammates, his linemen, in college, and got the shit kicked out of him by numerous members of that line. The linemen beat up the quarterback. Shout out to Reggie Ball. It's not a good thing to happen to you. There's no good way to spin it. So maybe Dak is doing what he has to do, towing the line. But let's ease off on this leader guy shtick that, Dak's people are trying to cultivate for Dak. And that's about it, man. That's episode 100. I am so happy to have brought it to you guys. I'm so happy to finally have it recorded, put it behind me, on to the next 100 to 200. But there's one thing I got to do before I go, because I got to ask this question on some of those open mailbags. How did this happen? How did we get to 100? Starts a couple years back. I moved to Philadelphia with my now wife, and when I got there, I realized I had no one to talk about sports with. My ex-roommate Chad was writing for a website called Dude You Crazy. It's a Georgia football website. And I came on, wrote a couple things, got a couple, people good responses. And I talked to the head of the site, Andrew Hall, and said, hey, man, if you ever want to do a podcast, I'd love to help run it. And I ran it for 167 episodes. And the funny thing about that podcast was I started it with no idea how to do it. I had no clue. I was peppering Rod from the Black Eye Test. I was peppering Sterling from Gaming and Then Some. I was bugging the hell out of Brandon from Wars of 40 Acres. And I was definitely annoying Chris about all the ins and outs of how to do this. I said I'd do it. I said, yeah, let's just start a podcast. And I was like, oh, shit, I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I don't know how to do this. But it was that same year that Rod went full-time on his show, and I read Kevin Smith's book, Tough Shit. And I was like, you know what? Be a why not person. Take that shot. And I was there for 167 episodes. We were on internet radio. We were doing, it was a lot of fun. But I wanted to grow. I wanted to change. While I was there, I'd also started doing Super Tuesday recaps with Chris. I had pitched him. I was a fan, man. I just listened to MTR. And I pitched him Character Corner. I was like, what if we did these deep dives? No. I pitched him Comic Book Club. He ignored the suggestion. And then once I started doing Super Tuesday, that's when I got put on Character Corner and whatnot. But, since then, I came over and I said I want to, expand my breadth and not just cover Georgia football, which I still love, but hurts me more than I'd like to admit. And thus, UD Pop was born. And we're here now, 100 episodes later, looking down the barrel of our second podcast week on the network, looking down the barrel of another NFL season, and looking down the barrel of me taking all y'all's money and all y'all's pride in this NFL pick'em and in fantasy football. Thank you all for listening to our 100th episode. I just can't wait for whatever's next, man. We've got a lot of things in the plan, I know, as a network as a whole, but we're continuing to grow, continue to change, continue to get better. Email udpodcast@gmail.com with pick'em in the subject line so I can get you down for the NFL pick'em. Email udpodcast@gmail.com, with fantasy in the subject line. That way I can get a head count for our fantasy league. And thank you once again. That was your show. This is your outro. See you guys next week.